Hello and welcome back to Storytime with Eric Zimmer. I've got one more James Marshall classic this week for you. And this one is yet another fairy tale retelling. Hansel and Gretel, retold and illustrated by James Marshall. You ready? All right, let's begin. Once upon a time, in a cottage near a vast forest, there lived a poor woodcutter, his wife and his 2 children. The boy was called Hansel, and the girl, Gretel. At the best of times, the family had precious little to live on. But now there was a great famine in the land, and food was scarcer than ever. The woodcutter's wife was worried there wouldn't be enough for her. "Those wretched children of yours are gobbling everything up," she said to her husband. "No, you're the one who's gobbling everything up." "Do you want your pretty little wife to waste away? Something will have to be done." "Little? Little? You're not little at all." "Yes, my dear," said the poor woodcutter, who was afraid of his wife's ferocious temper. Where have I heard that before?" "She doesn't like us," said Gretel. "You mean love?" "Yes, she does," said Hansel, but he didn't mean it. And who could blame him? And who could blame her? One night, when the woodcutter was tossing and turning and worrying about how to feed his family, his wife revealed a plan. "She looks like she has cinnamon bun curls, like Princess Leia in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Doesn't she? Except she has red hair instead of brown." "Listen to this," she whispered in her husband's ear. "We will take the children into the woods, give them a bit of bread, and leave them there." "Never!" cried the woodcutter. But his wife badgered and badgered. That's another way of saying pester, bother, or nag, just in case you don't know the word. "My poor children," cried the woodcutter. "I know what's best, you dolt," said his wife. "Oh dear," whispered Gretel. "Don't worry," said Hansel. "I'll take care of us." And slipping out into the moonlit night, he gathered up as many white pebbles as he could find. "What are you doing?" said Gretel. "You'll see," said Hansel. "Up, you lazy bones," said the woodcutter's wife early the next morning. "It's time to go to the forest to fetch wood." And she gave Hansel and Gretel a crust of bread. "Save it for lunch. It's all you'll get." The family set off. In a short while, Hansel stopped and turned around. Soon he did it again. "Why are you lagging behind, Hansel?" asked his father. "I'm looking back at my white kitten on the roof," said Hansel. "You donkey," snapped the woodcutter's wife. "That's not your kitten. That's the morning sun on the chimney." They entered the vast forest. Of course, they do have a white kitten here. In the middle of the forest, Hansel and Gretel were told to build a fire of brushwood and to wait. "We'll return soon," said the woodcutter's wife. "Yeah, right." And the children were left all alone. They heard the sound of an axe chopping wood, and they thought their father must be nearby. But it was really a bow he had tied to a dead tree being blown about by the wind. At midday, they ate their bread and waited patiently. The afternoon slowly passed, but no one came. Finally, the children closed their eyes and went to sleep. When they awoke, it was pitch black. "Are you frightened?" said Gretel. "Of course not," said Hansel. When the moon had risen, Hansel took Gretel by the hand and showed her how they could follow the trail of white pebbles. "What a clever brother I have," said Gretel. It took them the rest of the night to get out of the forest. When the children arrived home at daybreak, the woodcutter's wife was shocked and infuriated, although she quickly pretended to be glad to see them. "We thought you were never coming back," she said. Yeah, well, it was obviously her intention to make sure the children never came back. Huh. Then maybe you shouldn't be a parent. Hansel and Gretel believed the worst to be over. But soon there came another famine, and the woodcutter's wife began to fret. "There's hardly enough for the two of us to eat," she said to her husband. "We'll simply have to take the children back to the woods." "Not again," whispered Gretel. "Don't worry," said Hansel. But when he went to gather up more pebbles, he found the door bolted. She had seen to that. Ah! So she must have known their little game, huh? Yeah, well, they've seen their mother's little game, too. The next morning, the children were given a bit of bread, and the family set off. Every few paces, Hansel turned around to strew a handful of breadcrumbs behind him. "Why are you tarrying, Hansel?" said his father. "Huh, you think you don't know?" I'm starting to wonder if their father knows any of this. "I'm looking back at my white pigeon on the roof," said Hansel. "Simpleton!" cried the woodcutter's wife. "That isn't your pigeon, it's the morning sun on the chimney." When they came to the most forbidding part of the forest— no, this is not the Forbidden Forest from Harry Potter. This is somewhere in Germany, considering Hansel and Gretel is a German tale. The Forbidden Forest is in England, where Hogwarts is. When they came to the most forbidding part of the forest, the woodcutter's wife said, "You will wait here while your father and I gather wood. We will be back soon." Hansel and Gretel did not believe her. And why should they? At midday, Gretel shared her bread with Hansel. Soon as they did before, they fell asleep. And when they awoke, it was pitch black. "Ooh," said Gretel. "When the moon rises," said Hansel, "we will follow the trail of breadcrumbs out of the woods." But when the moon rose, they had found no breadcrumbs. The birds in the forest had eaten them all. Go figure. "We'll never get out," cried Gretel. They wandered on, deeper and deeper into the forest, eating whatever berries they could find. Yeah, well, if Arnold's Grandpa Phil was with them, he'd tell them which ones to eat. "Red and sweet are good to eat, but I swear by the sonnet, green will make you vomit." "Red and sweet are good to eat, but I swear by the sonnet, green will make you vomit." I love doing that voice. Anyways, back to the story. When they'd been away from home for 3 days, a snow-white bird appeared. "Let's follow it," said Hansel. The snow-white bird led them to a clearing where there was a small house made of cookies and candy, spun sugar and cake. Oh boy, this is even more delicious than a gingerbread house. Yeah. It was like no house they'd ever seen. Being terribly hungry, the children set about having a regular feast. Hansel broke off a piece of roof cake, and Gretel tried a bit of window sugar. It was all as good as it looked. Suddenly they heard a shrill voice from inside. "Nibble, little mousie, who's that nibbling on my housie?" Uh-oh. The door flew open. "What's this?" said a lady, who Gretel was sure was a witch. She is a witch. "Too tasty! Pretty little children have come to stay. Now don't be alarmed, my angels. I'm really very sweet." And she took Hansel and Gretel by the hand and led them inside, where a sumptuous dinner of sugared pancakes with apples and nuts had been prepared. Hansel and Gretel ate until they were perfectly stuffed. Time for sleep now, said the lady, and she tucked them into snug, warm beds and tiptoed away. She's nice, said Hansel. Said Gretel. She suspects something. The next morning, the lady, who was indeed a witch, see, I told you she was a witch, snatched Hansel from his bed and carried him outside and tossed him right into a cage. Lovely, said the witch, lovely. This is where I shall fatten you up, and when you're all plump and juicy I shall have a regular feast. You let my brother out, cried Gretel. But the witch, who was delighted with her handiwork, only cackled and did a little dance. Poor Gretel, who had to do the witch's bidding, was put to work cooking enormous meals for Hansel. For her own dinner, Gretel was given only crab shells. Who eats crab shells? Ugh. Every morning the witch would go to Hansel's cage to see how much fatter he'd grown. Hansel, stick out your finger, she said. And Hansel would stick out an old chicken bone. Witches, as everyone knows, have beady red eyes and dreadfully bad eyesight. I never knew that. Until now. I simply don't understand it, said the witch. You're as thin as a bone. Can't eat you yet. Now Hansel's little trick worked for some time. Every morning the hungry witch was annoyed to find him still so scrawny. Phooey, said the witch. Not yet. But finally she had run completely out of patience. I'll just have to eat you as you are, she said. And she had a consoling thought. Perhaps she should eat the little one too. Gretel, dear, she said, would you please peek into the oven to see if it is sufficiently hot? But Gretel saw what she had in mind. So do I. Yeah. I don't know how, she said stupidly. Goose, cried the witch. I'll show you. And she crawled partially into the oven. Really, there was only one thing for Gretel to do. She gave the witch a tremendous shove. The horrid witch roasted to a regular crisp. We're free, cried Gretel. The witch is dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Oh, sorry, wrong fairy tale. I couldn't help it. Hansel flew out of the cage like a bird. What a clever little sister I have, he cried. Together they explored the witch's house, where they found boxes and boxes of precious gems and gold coins. Better than pebbles, said Hansel, but now it is time to leave the witch's wood. When they had wandered about for some time, they came to a wide lake. A kindly duck offered to ferry them across. As they neared the opposite shore, Gretel was sure they could see their father's house in the distance. When the children reached home, their father welcomed them with open arms, for he loved them dearly and had been miserable without them. I can only imagine. He told them his wife had died. Whether Hansel and Gretel were sorry is difficult to say. I think not. And who could blame them? But with their father, they lived happily ever after. The end. I'll see you next time on Story Time with Eric Zimmer. Take care.